Hi, Vasundhara.
Hello. Hi.
Hi, Vasundhara. Good evening, Vasundhara. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, very much. So, Vasundhara, I'm Rajini, and I'm part of the WEF, psychologist as well. But I'm a human resources professional, heading HR for an organization here in Chennai. Great meeting you, Vasundhara. And NIMHANS is one institute any psychologist would aspire to visit and learn from the clinicians there. So you are a mental health clinician at NIMHANS, and you're also a senior research fellow. So, and the topic today that you have presented is very interesting, the disaster management planning. So, can you take us through what you planned to speak about, please?
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Rajni, for that introduction.
Okay.
So this topic becomes very close to my heart is because one, I was researching and I was also a clinician working in the peak of the COVID pandemic itself. So in both ways, and it led me to a point where I had to write down a proper research and publish itself. And I would like to actually share what I learned in the entire period itself. Now, when obviously a pandemic comes, there is a lot of uncertainty that kind of follows it. For example, when if we the closest example that we can take is of COVID itself, where we saw it as a public health crisis altogether, be it in the national or the international level altogether. So there was not a single population or particular segment that was not really affected by it. I mean, in simple words, we could actually say that pandemics can actually extend beyond just the purview of medicine itself. And it's extremely important for one to understand that it is not just the pandemic has a lot of psychological and economic consequences as well that comes in, right? And when you have a lot of therapeutic focus, when you actually restrict it to disasters, you need to understand that the deep-rooted psychosocial issues need to be understood because there's a lot of repercussion that comes in and you cannot really neglect it. So question of, is disaster management planning a necessity in the present time? Absolutely, yes. And the three things that start off with is, having that effectiveness, that applicability, and the feasibility. Now, these are the three major pillars on the basis of which you start doing the work itself. It's often extremely important also to understand what's appropriate to the particular community, particular situation that you're working for. I think irrespective of the discipline, there are three common terminologies that we often hear is, knowledge, attitudes, practice, what we say as KAP. And that, though it's the most simplest and so, overused terminology, most often it is not really understood in the right way that it should be. So, regardless of what the pandemic is or what disaster that you're dealing with, you need to be prepared. You need to understand not just as a person who's, say, in the front line, but also as a regular, normal civilian who's actually, living. You need to understand at least what are the basics that I should be prepared of myself. And right now in the scenario that we are in, we speak about community-based disaster preparedness. That's what people are talking now more and more about, which says that you need to understand it as a community, you need to prepare as a community, you need to use the resources what your community has, and go ahead and work. But if I had a method in which I would actually in a stepped manner say that what are the major and I would say the most important methods or pointers to keep in mind of how to plan for disaster management. I think the first step is basically no matter what the disaster you're dealing with, whichever situation or community you are in, you need to have that collection of the basic information itself. That's always the first step. You need to gauge what your situation is, what your problem, statement is itself. Understand what's that basic attitudes, basic beliefs that people have towards that particular disaster itself, even before it occurs. So, you can actually go back and always ask individuals who previously must have encountered some other
Mhm.
disasters that, do you remember that? Do you remember what actually happened? What do you think actually was associated with it? A lot of understanding of, what your community understands and associates with it comes from that. So I think that's step one, because it gives you the understanding of your vulnerable population, what resources you have, and also what support systems that you have extremely strong in the community that you are. The second step definitely is about crisis management. A very, very important thing that we speak when we speak about disaster management is crisis. So that exactly, in the event of the disaster, you speak about extremely the understanding of what the situation really demands, how you need to really, use your common sense at that point, given the situation, and appropriately take the actions forward. So you cannot really go by what the book is telling you every time. Sometimes you just need to, be outside the book and understand what the situation requires, demands, and provide for that. The
Mhm.
third is the step is majorly about, when you start having that communication. So you like, you understood, you really like, pen down everything. So now you're at a point in time where you are starting the communication. And most often when we talk about preparedness, it's about understanding the situation. You need to understand that, what's the crisis that I have in hand. Based on that, I will work on the survival forward. So, the protection, the survival, the sustenance that comes in, that's like after that. So you need to really understand what's in hand for me. After that is when you understand that, should you minimize or should you maximize the resources? How should you like really work? And you start having the conversation with the major stakeholders itself, right? And I think it's always, always, always important to have very authentic sources where you're having your reference from. You need to have those authentic sources because they publish on a particular manner. So just because we tend to like, just like share information or just speak information as and when we receive it. And that kind of causes a lot of sometimes necessary or unnecessary panic itself. So you can, if you know the authentic information, it actually saves you a lot, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
And,
so this particular disaster management kind of a thing, when we look at the current situation, um,
Mhm.
I think, living in Chennai, I'm sure you're
Yes.
from Bangalore. So,
Yes.
and living in Chennai, when I visit places, it looks
Hmm.
like, people have forgotten about this disaster itself.
Trust me,
And
I
I'm
see
sure.
people on a daily basis and they just like start walking inside without masks sometimes. Like we have to
No,
repeat it.
absolutely. And you know what, Vasundhara, I feel that forgetfulness is one of the best coping mechanisms that humans have developed over a period of time. And
Uh,
they don't need any coaching, mentoring, or therapy for that because we are naturally forgetful and we get more forgetful with age, you know that. And especially when it comes to such things. And see, yesterday, the news was full of these helicopter crash
hmm, hmm, hmm,
and just before that, 3 days before that, it was all about the various POSCO cases that are happening across the world.
hmm.
So people are navigating between information. And
Yes.
what is disaster today is a very different thing. And as you rightly said, I hope a COVID kind of disaster does not strike again. Um,
Hmm.
and like I told this to the previous speaker as well, while I was moderating a session, my very favorite teacher, she's a psychiatrist, she's a psychologist, and she's based out of Bangalore, Jayanagar as well, Dr. Lata Satish. She
Okay.
told me, she told the entire world when the COVID struck, she said, "Don't worry, human community. We are so resilient and we'll come out of it." And of course, it was in April 2020. But today, I feel Dr. Lata's words have come, true in its true colors, because because forgetfulness has taken over this disaster, and just keeping the light moments apart. Uh, you know, how do you think humans will navigate in future,
Hmm.
based on your experience? And I request you to take 1 minute because I need to do a small formality with you before I close. And I think I think it's an interesting topic and I like to listen to you more. The time is very short. We have 3 minutes. So, I'll take 1 minute for my formality and you can take 2 minutes to talk about this.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think now that you're saying this, there is this very famous quote that Jerry Conner had actually said. And if I have to summarize something in a very short period of time, I think that quote really works. It goes like, in a volatile and dynamic world, be ready for change. Always, look at opportunity as a method to learn rather than, resisting it due to the fear of failure. And I think somewhere or the other, as a human race, be it at individual, family, or societal or community level, I strongly believe that's something that we are constantly adapting. We're constantly understanding that what works, what doesn't work, let me work forward. And that I think is one thing I really think. I think if going forward, one thing definitely is about the fact that we need to have more, you can have a global purview, but have very local, solutions in your mind.
Absolutely.
And then understand the situation and work forward. I think that really would work really well.
And I want to tell you because we have the host has just told me I have 2 minutes, and my neighbor, around March last week of 2020, she came. She was standing on the terrace upstairs and she's telling me, you know what? Somebody in the next street has been diagnosed with COVID. And we all got so scared about that. And exactly after 6 months, her next door neighbor passed away, COVID. Yeah. And I think she was able to handle that disaster better than the next street COVID wala. And how as a community we came together to help that family was a story of its own kind. I hope this disaster doesn't strike again and we don't have to talk about this and we get to listen to another interesting topic from Vasundhara. And I look forward to that day. And thank you, Vasundhara. And we are so honored to confer the Exceptional Leader of Excellence Award from the Women Economic Forum to you, Vasundhara. And I'm announcing this and you will get the award very soon. It'll reach you very soon. Thank you very much, Vasundhara. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.